Hi there. So when you look at a web page, you might be thinking, how is it that the information on the page is so neatly organized? So you got your images neatly stacked on the left, and then you got your menu at the top, which looks really nice. Then you got your calendar table on the right. So how's this all possible? Well, it's actually really simple. The entire web page gets divided into separate sections, separate blocks to be more precise. So for example, the top part of the page is a separate block known as the header. And the central part with all the articles is another block. And then the bottom part, called a footer, is yet another block. So then each of these blocks in turn get divided into even smaller blocks. So the central part, for example, can be divided into two large blocks. One block consists of the recent articles, and then the other block is the sidebar. Then these blocks in turn get divided into even smaller blocks. The left block, for example, is divided into a block with the heading, then the article blocks, and then the button with the more articles, which is another block. So the sidebar is divided into a search field, calendar, and then popular news. So now you understand that the entire page is simply various blocks divided into other blocks. So nothing more, nothing less. Now, most of these blocks are created using the same tag called a div, which comes from the word division. Basically, it's this tag that allows us to create a block to which we can then add various styles. All right, so say we have two paragraphs on our page. To create them, we're going to use two paragraph tags, two p tags. And now what do? Well, we want to set a common background for both of these tags. All right, so if we go to our text editor and create two p tags with the lorem ipsum text, and then in CSS, for the p tag, we set a background color, orange for example. Then you'll see that there's a space between these two tags. So what can we do to unite these into a common block with one shared background? Well, this is exactly the kind of thing that a div tag can be used for. Just wrap both our p tags into a div tag. And then in CSS, we'll set the background color for this div. And then just like that, it's all orange. Okay, so also we can now add additional styles for this div. So for example, width could be at 70%, and now it's going to look like this. Or we could set it at 50%, and now it's only half of the screen width. But by default, as you already saw, the width of a div is 100%. So that is, it's going to take up the entire space of its parent block. Okay, we can also define a height for it. So say height 400 pixels, and now the block has a height of 400 pixels. Very simple. Or it could be 600 pixels, and it's going to stretch out even further. All right, so you get the point. So basically, we can specify any styles for this block so you can have it just the way you want it. But by default, if you don't specify any styles, the block is going to be invisible. So now let's wrap our p tags into a separate div. And now here we're going to change p to div and see what happens. Refresh the page. And now you see that even the space between these two paragraphs, it's now also orange. So as you can see, by default, the width of the block is 100% of the parent element. So 100% of the screen in our case. So we can specify the width to be at 50%, for example. And just like that, now it only takes up half of the page. We can also add a height of 400 pixels, for example. And there you have it. Also, we can apply the other CSS properties that we learned. For example, to get the text to be centered in the block, we can add text align center. And now it's in the center. We can also add a color for the text, say just white, so FFF. And now the text is white. So basically you can do anything you want within this div. All right. So the only thing you need to remember is that a div is simply a section of your web page that you can stylize. All right, let's copy this div and create another one. Refresh. And now we have two of them. But say, what if we want the second block to have a blue background instead of the orange one that the first one has? So the second one is going to have blue and we want the first one to keep the orange background. How do we do that? Well, for that, we need to use classes, which we already learned about. So typically, each div on the page would have a class name. And that way you just add styles by referring to its class name. So for example, let's add a class here and call it blue block, for instance. And then here, we can either write div.blueBlock, or we could just write blue block without the div part, which is how it's typically written. And then we just add the background color, and the value for it is going to be blue. So refresh the page, and there you have it. So it's that simple. All right, that's it for this lesson, and I'll see you in the next one.